look like they're weakening at the very least, and see some large hail earlier on out there. But you're also picking up the shear product, which helps give us an idea in terms of the possibility for some rotation.
Yeah, so think about it this way. This product is where those winds come really close together. Basically, those areas that I was starting to circle for you guys back at home, this kind of highlights those areas and says, hey, this is where we have strong wind shear, those winds coming really close together going in opposite directions. So a lot of those areas that we are looking for that rotation are all over the place. We are still looking at a ton of rotation in the atmosphere because of what we have going on with these storms, and some of these just remaining very strong thunderstorms as well as you move out into the plains, Chris.
All right, so there you have it there. Of course, our other big story is subtropical storm Alberto. Destin, Florida, seeing some of that heavy rainfall and some of the impacts from that storm in through the Florida Panhandle, but also seeing some bits of sunshine coming on out as Alberto moves further inland, and we are starting to see some improving conditions for some of us here in through parts of Florida, and finally a bit of dry air starting to work its way on in. But notice those reds up to the north and west of the center of circulation of that storm, and that's where we're seeing some of that heavy rainfall that will continue to move north in through the state of Alabama. As we head over the next few hours and into the overnight period, flash flood watches virtually everywhere here from Indiana, from Evansville, Indiana, south towards the Gulf Coast, on east towards the Outer Banks of North Carolina. This is a lot of real estate here, folks, that's being covered by this flash flood watch, and this is the main hazard. It is the rain, and more rain. And now with the storm onshore and with the winds weakening, this is going to be the big hazard here, folks. It's going to be the heavy rainfall through Georgia, Alabama, and on up into the Carolinas and Tennessee. And notice some of those reds and yellows in through central Alabama as that pushes way off towards the north overnight. Out here through central Alabama, pretty concerned about the threat for some flash flooding. Of course, your ground is already saturated. We've had so much rainfall over the last few days, and many spots here throughout the southeast. It's been a very busy 10 days, 2 weeks or so in terms of rainfall, so that ground can't really take too much more water, and you dump a lot more water on it in a short period of time. We could be looking at some flash flooding. Some of that moves further west as we get into your Tuesday morning. Atlanta could be looking at a wet commute on in the perimeter there in through northern Georgia. Tomorrow afternoon, this will lead to some heavy rainfall through the Tennessee River Valley, and then eventually on up into the Ohio River Valley as well. And by Thursday, we should kick this on up into Canada, and this should be no longer an issue for the United States. Denver, though, you've had some issues with hail. We'll tell you about the severe weather threat in the Mile High City and elsewhere coming up on Weather Nation. string of tornado warnings in eastern Colorado. We've had a couple of confirmed tornadoes on the ground here in the eastern corner of the Centennial State. Thanks for joining us here on Weather Nation. We're, of course, tracking the severe weather threat across the plains, as well as subtropical storm Alberto as it moves its way through the southeast. More on Alberto here in the next few minutes, but want to turn our attention to the imminent story, what's taking place right now. And those are these tornadoes in eastern Colorado.
All right, Chris, let's start with the northern ones and then head our way farther down to the south. This is going to be Weld County in northern Colorado, where we have 2 new tornado warnings. Both of those expire at 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, so not long-lived with these, but we are starting to see a little bit of rotation within some of these. This one off to the north, now a continuation of that warning a little bit earlier in Weld County. Still seeing that strong sign of rotation out of that storm cell, and then even farther down to the south into Morgan County. Still seeing a little bit of rotation there as well, Chris.
All right, so you got that rotation out there through eastern Colorado and into northeastern Colorado. And this is more along the eastern plains, Centennial State, just between I-76 and I-70. And looks like a good chunk. That's a huge tornado warning, by the way. That's about 70 miles north to south. You were mentioning that, Jeremy. But yeah, that's a huge tornado warning. But that is for mainly Washington County and then the southern edge of Logan County in eastern Colorado.
And then you get down into Kit Carson County as well. So very widespread with these. The reason there are so many and it is so widespread is we have train spotters on the ground who are reporting multiple different tornadoes and land spouts on the ground, picking up, putting down, being long-lived, short-lived, all over the board with some of these. So that's the reason they have warned such a big area, saying, hey, watch out for rotation. And as you look, this is our velocity product. What you look for to see is areas where you have winds going away from the radar and winds going toward the radar really close together. Those are your 2 different colors, the green and the red. And when they're close together, that's a sign of that tight rotation in the atmosphere.
We've got plenty of that there in eastern Colorado, and that's something we're going to certainly have to keep an eye for as we head over the next few hours. So you're joining us again from eastern Colorado. This is going to be mainly a concern for you if you're watching us from Denver or the Fort Collins area, the I-25 corridor. This is not really a hazard, at least right now, for us in through the Front Range, but you head east, and that's where we're looking at some of that out here as well, Jeremy.
Oh, absolutely. But as you zoom on out, notice there is a ton of activity taking place from parts of Nebraska all the way down through far western Kansas, even now into the panhandle of both Oklahoma and Texas. We are looking at a powerful line of storms, multiple multiple severe thunderstorm warnings embedded within this line of storms because of the hail and the damaging wind associated with them.
And that flood threat there as well. So there's going to be a multifaceted threat as we head over the next few hours. We've got a bunch of watches in place, and it does include you in Denver, where right now you are under a severe thunderstorm watch in the Mile High City. That looks to be a little sunshine trying to come back out in Denver. You had some nickel-sized hail reported in downtown Denver a short while ago. The Colorado Rockies game is going to get underway in the next 20 minutes after they had a rain, hail, lightning delay. But Denver, your severe weather threat is starting to wind on down. The main threat for you in Denver and Cheyenne, maybe a few leftover shower storms later on tonight, but it's more into eastern Colorado and northwestern Kansas. That's where we have that yellow shading, and that's where we've got the tornado watch. That goes until 10 p.m. Central Time tonight, 9 p.m. Mountain. Does include you in Goodland, as well as Hayes, Kansas, Norton, Scott City. This is right through the I-70 corridor. So if you're driving between Denver and Kansas City or vice versa here tonight, certainly want to be on the lookout. If you could push that back to tomorrow morning, that would probably be a great idea out there in through eastern Colorado and western Kansas. Meantime, strong line of showers and storms will move its way through I-80 and I-70 overnight tonight. It will weaken on down once we start getting 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock or so. Once the sun goes down, we should see some pretty quick weakening with that line, but still some pretty strong storms will hang around as we head through the overnight period. By tomorrow morning, most of those should die back down. We'll probably redevelop some of the storms later on tomorrow. For your Monday, for your day today, your Memorial Day Monday, and this is where we're looking at that threat for severe weather across much of the nation's midsection, including Minneapolis. By the way, Twin Cities up to 100 degrees today. Incredible warmth for you. Your warmest temperature overall since 2012. That's helping fuel a lot of this very warm weather here and through the Midwest and down through the plains states, and large hail, as tends to be the case. Eastern Colorado, western Kansas, and western Nebraska, that's going to be our big hazard in a lot of these spots. As we get later on tonight, damaging winds will be a big threat, and also that tornado potential that we've been mentioning will also be in play. Ellicott City, Maryland, flooding. Yikes, just absolutely terrible. We got the latest from Ellicott City coming up right here on Weather Nation. We We've got some incredible photos into us here at Weather Nation. These just into us from a short while ago near Cope, Colorado. Twin landspout tornadoes. That's what you're looking at here. Yes, and for the record, this is mostly for weather nerds. Landspout tornadoes have a bit of a different way of forming than a traditional supercell thunderstorm, but obviously what you're looking at, the same result, and in just incredible photo here, that courtesy of @WXJO on Twitter. Certainly appreciate that photo, but of course, when we're talking about tornadoes and several tornado warnings here, Jeremy, in through eastern Colorado, there is certainly some imminent danger for some of us here in eastern parts of the Centennial State.
Absolutely. Notice there are multiple flashing polygons on your screen. A couple of these are set to expire here within moments in the area, just because they've noticed a little bit of weakening with some of that rotation, and that's going to continue. However, we hang on to a couple of them farther off to the north. So our big old one just south of Sterling, all the way down to the south, including Kit Carson County. Those two are set to expire here moments, and those are the ones that had those twin landspouts. Off to the north, we hang on to some of those in Morgan and Weld counties in northern Colorado, so we are hanging on to those with a little bit of signs of rotation coming in out of these systems. You can see some weaker rotation, but that's exactly what we've been seeing throughout the afternoon, and then we've had confirmed on-the-ground sightings of these tornadoes and landspouts in the area. Some sightings of a bigger stovepipe tornado, a lot of landspout activity similar to that picture that you saw there off the top of the show. Now, as we zoom on out, we do have yet another tornado warning that has just popped up right along Interstate 70 there. This one remains in effect until 6:15 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and it's for this little cell right there north of Flagler, and that's going to continue to progress its way off to the east. So Chris Brower hanging on to that one, and that one, a strong couplet there coming back on our velocity scan.
Now that's Kit Carson County, by the way, just the north of I-70, right near Flagler, Colorado, and yeah, a couple of areas of very strong rotation they are outlining there. So if you are watching us from Kit Carson County in eastern Colorado, you'd certainly want to seek shelter right now with these tornadoes that are confirmed to be on the ground. A lot of these tornadoes, Jeremy, as you're just saying, are confirmed to be on the ground right now. Also, that storm has 2-inch diameter hail with it, and that will impact you. If you're on I-70 right now, get off of 70 and avoid this area because, of course, the main threat being the tornado, but also we're talking about big-time hail, so get off the highway right now if you're watching us from far eastern Colorado.
Absolutely. Get off the highway, seek shelter. That's the best bit of advice we can give you. And really, if you are traveling along Interstate 70, Interstate 80, you name it, any major interstate across the plains right now, you need to take every sort of precaution you can and pay attention to the weather, maybe even delay some of that travel a little bit longer, because we are looking at so many different storms. Even if they're not tornado warned, we're still talking big time hail and incredible wind gusts.
And so from that and into parts of Kansas where we're looking at the threat for some flooding, unfortunately we saw flooding yesterday in an area that just was so hard hit less than 2 years ago. Ellicott City, this is just outside of Baltimore, and wow, I think that footage just about says it all out there in Ellicott City. Very, very sad to see that, and we'll have a bit more from Ellicott City over the next little while. Some of the moisture being fueled by this subtropical storm Alberto. The latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center is just into us here at Weather Nation. Maximum sustained winds now down to 40 miles an hour, which makes it a minimal tropical storm, subtropical storm at this point. For a storm to be classified as a subtropical storm, you need maximum sustained winds at 39 miles an hour or above. So we're certainly seeing some of that weakening. The pressure is up 1 millibar from the previous advisory. So when the pressure goes up, that's weakening. So it's a bit of an inverse relationship between the strength of a storm and the pressure. Pressure drops, it's a strengthening storm. In this case, the pressure is rising, and it's moving to the north at 10 miles an hour. So you've seen a quick little uptick in that forward speed. So this is starting to accelerate as it moves further inland, which is hopefully a little bit of good news that hopefully we want to see the acceleration that gets the storm on out of here and reduces the flood threat. Knock on wood, we do continue to see that acceleration with this storm. Flood threat throughout much of the Midwest as well as down through the Southeast, the Carolinas, much of Georgia and Alabama under the flash flood watch over the next little while. That forecast is bringing some of that heavy rainfall further north in through Alabama, Georgia, and then again on up through the I-85 corridor of upstate South Carolina and into the Carolinas as well as into eastern parts of Tennessee, and that rain will be with us into your day tomorrow. Our full team, of course, field correspondents, is tracking this on the ground right here on Weather Nation. We'll be checking in with them over the next few minutes, so stay with us right here for continued Alberto coverage.
We're bringing you back down to the Gulf Coast where we continue to track the remnants of subtropical storm Alberto. Even after a landfall and when things even look nice outside, might not necessarily be done with some of the biggest threats of this storm, Ben.
Yeah, guys, it's just after 7 on Florida's Gulf Coast and pretty low impacts overall here in Destin. I'll give you a live look at the beach. You can see people are already out here in their lawn chairs and enjoying the evening, but one thing you don't see a lot of is people swimming, and that's because that double red flag is still in effect. A lot of the hazards with Alberto have moved off, but those rip currents are still going to be a threat as the evening goes on.
Ben, one of the things that we've been talking about here, this is the Memorial Day holiday weekend, of course, today, obviously being Memorial Day itself. A lot of people that would be down there vacationing, having their vacation kind of washed out. Unfortunately, with this storm, that looks to be the main threat for a lot of areas, or is that a lot of ruined vacations, unfortunately. What has been the reactions on the vacations that you've spoken to there in the Florida Panhandle?
Chris, a lot of folks, a lot of families are disappointed that they had to take shelter today, but they understand those safety procedures that authorities and meteorologists put in place ahead of these storms because, as you've mentioned throughout the day, tropical storms can fluctuate in intensity, and I think everyone is just happy that they're safer than sorry tonight in Florida.
Absolutely. That is one of the things we are truly thankful for as this storm made its way ashore. But Chris, we do kind of have to shift our direction and focus on a little bit of severe weather. So Ben, we're going to touch base with you again here shortly. Thank you very much for that update. But we got to talk about some of those stronger storms. Across western Kansas, we have a new tornado warning. This one does remain in effect for a little while longer. Looks like until 6:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time for that storm. And there are some strong signs of rotation embedded within it, and you can see it right there just off to the south and west of Garden City, where we do have that tight couplet showing up on the radar right about there, getting some of that strong rotation and a very strong signature of that on the radar. And that's exactly what we've been monitoring throughout much of the day. Some strong thunderstorms across the region, still watching those move off to the north-northwest, and it's an area where we've been seeing those storms just hit continuously over and over, Chris, just one after the other the entire time throughout the day.
Yeah, so this has been a very busy area, and again, getting increasingly concerned about the threat for a flash flooding. But that new tornado warning, as you mentioned there on the radar, a strong signature of a tornado and reports of a rotating wall cloud. That's the parent cloud to a tornado with that storm as well into southwestern Kansas. And that big line sitting on up. Part of the issue with this line, though, Jeremy, that's something we've been kind of focusing in on as well. There's not a whole lot of west to east movement with this. It's just kind of sitting still, which means the same areas that are seeing rain now are likely to see it again and again over the next 2 to 3 hours. And we're talking about some very heavy rainfall within this line, so flooding will be an increasing concern over the next few hours.
You know, and this is an area where we actually do need the moisture, but a little bit too much of it is not going to be a good thing in this situation. You're going to get it sitting on the ground in and around the area. But moving off to the north and bringing the radar up to current, we'll take you into our Goodland radar and show you one of the storms just north of Interstate 70 in Colorado. That's for Fort Morgan County, or Kit Carson County, excuse me, in the area. And that's where we are seeing some rotation embedded within it, Chris, and that's one of those storms that we are continuing to monitor.
Yep, just north of Interstate 70 there, and that has a pretty good hook on it, and this has been an area we've been seeing those very strong storms and some of those tornadoes earlier on. We've seen this be a pretty big hot spot for some of that tornadic activity, and you're circling the area of very strong rotation, and certainly appears to be a possible tornado on the ground there just in the northwest of Stratton, Colorado.
But then as we move out of there and head off to the north, we'll switch back over to our Denver radar product, and you can see still hanging on to some of those stronger storms in Morgan and Weld County in northern Colorado. Those still remain tornado warned here for another little bit because of the energy associated with some of those storms. But across the region, we've been watching quite a bit of lightning, Chris, one of the many signs that say, hey, we still have a ton of energy in the atmosphere.
Yep, still more yet to go. And then some of those collapsing storms in eastern Colorado. You never know, if you step outside, you get one of those summertime thunderstorms, you get that cool breeze out ahead of it, that outflow becomes a boundary, and that outflow has to go somewhere. That cool air spread its way into some of these storms, which may actually help bring up some of these cells here in eastern Colorado. We often do see that. So long story short, we may see some more development over the next little while, and a big line continuing to march its way off towards the north and east along I-76 as well as Interstate 80. We'll have more on this, including, by the way, the threat for more storms perhaps for places like the Mile High City of Denver, where you saw a storm earlier on. Could we be talking about more storms in Denver later on this evening? We'll tell you about that coming up.
Welcome back to Weather Nation, where we continue to track multiple tornado warnings in the state of Colorado from north to south. We have them from Weld County down into Morgan County, Logan County, and all the way down into Kit Carson County. A strong line of thunderstorms pushing through the eastern portion of the state continues to produce isolated bits of rotation, and at times we've seen multiple land spouts on the ground and even a larger stovepipe tornado reported in the area. So let's go ahead and break them down for you from north all the way down to the south. These northern ones will expire here within about the next 5 minutes, 6:15 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time for the storms in Weld County and Morgan County. That's these top two all the way up here, where we still are monitoring a bit of rotation within the atmosphere. If we go ahead and turn on our velocity product, you can see a little bit of rotation within the atmosphere, a little bit weaker in the area, but unfortunately that's exactly what we've been seeing throughout the day, and then had reports of confirmed land spouts on the ground. So that's exactly what's been leading to quite a bit of this. Then as you get a little bit farther off the east into Logan County, seeing a little bit of rotation there within that storm cell. We have two different cells in this area, both lifting off to the north and the east, and this one will remain in effect until 6:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time for Logan County, just north of Sterling, Merino, and then if you know Colorado, if you've ever traveled along Interstate 76 out of Nebraska down to the south, it is just off of Interstate 76. Both of these storms about 10 miles off of the interstate, so very close to a heavily traveled area. And then speaking of heavily traveled area, as you move down to the south, Kit Carson County, down in central eastern Colorado, right along Interstate 70. In fact, now we are looking at the storm just miles, just a couple of miles north of Interstate 70, and continuing to move in that direction. We'll head on over to Goodland, Kansas radar. And thankfully this rotation has weakened just a bit. Watch what happens if we go back in time. You can see that a little bit farther to the north, it's this area right about here where we were seeing some of that rotation, and that was about 8 or 9 miles north of Interstate 70. But watch what happens as we bring the radar up to the most current scan. We've lost the strong signs of rotation there. A sign of weakening doesn't mean it's done just yet. We could just be seeing cycling within that storm, and then watch it pick right back up in strength and intensity as we move into the later hours of the afternoon. Now, down just south and west of Garden City, we are still hanging on to that storm, and that one still showing incredibly strong signs of rotation within the atmosphere here. Now watch what happens as I go back in time. You can see extremely strong signs of rotation now moving farther off to the east, and as it does so, we are still remaining within our tornado warning box, and that is once again a very strong storm now moving over toward Plymouth and making its way off to the north and the east in the area. But quite a few strong storms stretch across much of the plains, and we are going to continue to monitor this area for both severe weather and the threat of flooding as we move into the afternoon. Down to the south, that threat of flooding still sticks with us as we get Alberta still moving ashore, but it's in addition to the flooding, all of the coastal advisories and unfortunately the rip currents that make the water all that much more dangerous, Chris.
Here are the real heroes. What you're seeing there on the beach, lifeguards and local law enforcement and getting people off of the getting people out of the water here. And I understand that people have been ticketed with those double red flag warnings there. Just don't go in the water here, folks. I know that there's still some sun and maybe even seeing some rainbows out there and through the Florida Panhandle, but good on you guys out there getting those folks out of the water. Nobody should be in the water when we're talking about these very dangerous rip currents. Yesterday, according to our affiliate WPMI Mobile, there were 6 people rescued out in the waters. Again, I don't know how else to say it, but don't go in the water when we're talking about a landfalling subtropical storm moving its way onshore here, and with very, very high rip current risks along the Florida Panhandle as well as in southern Alabama and Mississippi. Storm now moving off towards the north. We have seen some weakening with this. Those maximum winds with the most recent advisory just came out a short while ago. Winds down to 40 miles an hour with the storm. If it goes down any further, we'll be down into tropical depression status, and pressure down is up, I should say, 1 millibar, which means that storm is starting to weaken and went up 1 millibar in the last advisory. Flash flood watch for most of the region. This is going to be the threat here, folks. It's going to be a very, very soggy few days for us across the southeast. And it's really here for your Tuesday and perhaps into your Wednesday to see that rainfall continue. And notice some of those bands of dark red, some heavy bands moving their way on through. I can tell you this wasn't fun too long ago in Centennial. It's just outside of our studios here at Weather Nation. Southern suburbs of Denver getting a pretty good storm. We had about a quarter-sized hail or so it looked earlier on here at the Weather Nation studios. In fact, while we were on the air, we could hear it pelting the roof. That was a whole lot of fun as we were all kind of terrified that it was impacting our cars, but everybody's car's okay. But
we are people too, and one of the things that someone asked us here at our studios is, hey, you guys are meteorologists, you saw this coming, you should have known better. But here's the deal, we are here on air telling you guys what's going on, so Chris and I had to just sit and wait while all of our lovely coworkers moved their cars.
Exactly, moved ours too, but there we go into northeastern Colorado. Same line of storms as it's moved this way into eastern Colorado. Still talking about a substantial tornado threat. I've seen several tornadoes already reported so far here on your Monday. Looks like into far northeast Colorado, one active tornado warning. That's going to be out there into Logan County in Colorado.
So it's just outside of Sterling along Interstate 76. Tons of lightning associated with this cell. One of the signs that it does have a little more strength. And if we go ahead and switch on over to our velocity product and then turn off lightning to just clean it up because there is so much of it, it's kind of hard to find. It's right near Logan where we do have a little bit of that rotation showing up. And that's where we have those strong indications of two different directional winds coming a little bit closer together. So that's where we could potentially be looking at our storm there. And this is kind of what we've been seeing throughout the day here. Weak bits of rotation showing up on the radar, indicating that we have something, but then on the ground you have a spotter saying, hey, this thing is on the ground. In fact, Chris is going to have a picture here shortly to show you exactly what we've seen here across parts of Colorado. Now down to the south, we've let some of those watches and warnings expire, warnings expire. Those watches still in effect for some of the areas. Let's go ahead and switch on over to our Dodge City radar where you can see a powerful line of storms. Tons of severe thunderstorm warnings embedded within this, but as well we do have a couple of areas of rotation. Two separate tornado warnings, one of these expiring at about 6:45 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, then the one farther off to the south, 6:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. This one showing a little bit weaker signs of rotation. Does look like that one's winding down ever so slightly, and then the one off to the north near Deaton, that's where we are hanging on to some stronger rotation. You can see it right there coming back to us on the radar. A couple of areas of rotation actually, but it does look like they've allowed that one to expire here as well. So lots of updates coming in, but one of the main threats that we are continuing to monitor is the threat for flooding across the region because we've been watching these storms hit a relatively similar area for a very long period of time. So these haven't moved all that much in an area that desperately needs the moisture. But unfortunately, we are going to hang on to our storm threat and have similar situations to what we saw earlier in the day, Chris.
Certainly looking at a threat for flooding and large hail, but this is what we saw. It's just incredible imagery here. This is from near Cope, Colorado, about an hour and a half ago. Twin tornadoes here, 1 and 2, as you can pretty clearly see on your screens. Again, within the last hour and a half that we did see this, near Flagler, Colorado, just to the north of Interstate 70. What appears to be a large tornado out there. No reports, at least yet to us here at Weather Nation. We'll keep you posted of any damage out this way. But just hopefully if you are watching us from eastern Colorado, make sure you are seeking shelter from these storms. They do have a history of producing tornadoes as well as some large hail. We do have a tornado watch that's in place through eastern Colorado and central and western Kansas that goes till 10 p.m. tonight. Denver, you are no longer in the severe thunderstorm watch, but your eastern and northern suburbs are still on the severe thunderstorm watch. This is a severe thunderstorm watch, by the way, southwest Kansas, eastern Colorado. Yellow is going to be the tornado watch, eastern Colorado and much of central and western Kansas that goes till 10 p.m. central or 9 p.m. mountain time tonight. Big line of storms will continue to march their way off towards the east. That's going to impact Interstate 70 as well as I-80. I know a lot of us maybe getting home from visiting friends or going to barbecues, wherever it is you were going. If you're on this interstates here tonight, again, I-80, I-70, especially late tonight, it's going to be pretty nasty out there. Some very strong winds, some large hail, maybe even an isolated tornado or two. By tomorrow morning, those storms do weaken on down considerably. Overall threat for severe weather from the upper Midwest all the way south here into the Caprock region of the Texas Panhandle. Tomorrow, we move that into Kansas and Oklahoma with that threat force and those stronger storms. And Wednesday, today. A couple of areas of severe weather, including Colorado, the northwest, as well as in through the Ohio River Valley. Well, it's certainly been a busy day of severe weather. We're also tracking subtropical storm Alberto. We'll have the very latest on the storm here in just a minute, but severe weather has really been a big issue for eastern Colorado. Top left-hand side of your screen, take a look at some hail and some heavy rain that moved through the Denver metro area a short while ago, but now still a tornado warning in eastern Colorado. We'll tell you about it right here on Weather Nation.
We still do have quite a bit going on. Now we're taking you out to the Viper radar. Let's go ahead and head on over to our Denver radar site and kind of clean things up. Notice the Denver metro looking quite nice, especially after some of those stronger storms rumbled through. The Rockies game is picked back up and things are trending back toward where they should be. But notice quite a few tornado warnings just within the past hour, and now those have all been allowed to expire. We are looking at, for the first time in about 2 hours, no tornado warnings in the state of Colorado. Still a ton of strong thunderstorms, quite a few severe thunderstorms in the area, and we are going to hang on to those for a bit longer. If we move farther off to the east and a little bit down to the south, we'll find ourselves in western Kansas. We're from about Hayes all the way down through Garden City, Ulysses, Liberal, Guyman. We are still looking at that strong line of storms. Now, this is something interesting. I'm going to bring us on a 3-hour loop. That seems like a very long time. Well, it's because it is. And here's the deal. In the past 3 hours, we have not seen much movement out of these storms. In fact, these storms have just kind of stayed within the same area, and that's going to raise the risk for flooding across the region because of all that rain hitting the same spots repeatedly. And this is actually a very dry region where we need the moisture. Just sometimes too much of a good thing when you haven't had it causes some flooding concerns in and around their region. Now, as we move off to the north, some stronger storms rumbled out of Iowa. Now seeing a couple of those on far northeastern portions of Kansas, but then stretching up into Iowa, now southern Minnesota. Those storms have started the weekend. We're starting to see some activity south of Rochester as you get down towards Stewartville. Marion seeing some of those along Interstate 90. Then lifting off to the north, moving out of the Twin Cities, starting to see some of those storms lifting up toward Little Falls, areas like Spooner, Sandstone, all under the gun for some of these stronger storms. Starting to weaken ever so slightly just north of Interstate 94. Amory, Wisconsin, seeing some of those as well. That's just north of New Richmond. And so we are still monitoring some of these in and around the Twin Cities. But boy, have they done a number on those temperatures. Minneapolis went from up at 100 down into the low 70s as these move through. So they are bringing a little bit of heat relief for residents in the Midwest. But all the way down to the south, we are still tracking Alberto, where we are still watching some heavy rain come down across the region, and scenes like this out of Panama City Beach, Florida, where, Chris, that just doesn't look like fun.